Two people can earn the same income for 10 years and end up living in completely different financial realities. One quietly builds wealth, the other stays stuck. And the uncomfortable part is this: the difference usually isn't intelligence, it isn't luck, it isn't even income. If you're watching this, you've probably had moments where you've looked around and wondered how someone else seems to be moving ahead financially while you're working just as hard. You do the responsible things, you show up, you pay your bills, you try to improve yourself, yet somehow the gap keeps growing. Not overnight, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day it feels impossible to ignore. The strange thing is that wealth doesn't usually separate people through one giant decision. It separates them through hundreds of tiny decisions nobody notices, including the people making them. That's why so many hardworking people stay confused. They're looking at the outcome, but they're missing the process. And once you see the process, you'll never look at money the same way again. Because the people who build wealth faster are often playing a completely different psychological game, a game that starts long before money ever appears in a bank account. And the question is, what are they doing differently that almost nobody talks about? Because the answer isn't what most people expect. When people talk about wealth, they usually focus on visible things: income, investments, businesses, properties, assets. But those are results. Results tell you where someone ended up. They don't tell you how they got there. That's where most financial advice falls apart. It focuses on the scoreboard, not the psychology driving the score. What you're about to discover is not a list of money tricks. It's a pattern hiding underneath nearly every wealth-building story you've ever heard. The surprising part, once you see it, you'll start recognizing it in your own decisions. At work, at home, in conversations, even in moments that seem completely unrelated to money, because wealth is often built long before wealth becomes visible. And the first difference appears in a place most people never think to look: their relationship with time. Imagine someone sitting at their kitchen table late at night. The bills are paid, the paycheck came in, nothing is technically wrong. But there's a quiet frustration they can't shake. They feel like they're running, always running, working, managing responsibilities, putting out fires, trying to stay ahead, yet somehow never getting ahead. Every month feels like a race against the clock. And because life feels urgent, every decision becomes about the present. What's due today? What's needed this week? What's uncomfortable right now? The future becomes something they think about later, not because they're irresponsible, because they're exhausted. And this is where something important happens. People who struggle financially often don't have a money problem first. They have a time horizon problem. Without realizing it, they train themselves to optimize for immediate relief, immediate comfort, immediate certainty, immediate rewards. The human brain loves immediate rewards. It's wired that way. If you feel stressed, your brain wants relief. If you feel uncertainty, your brain wants clarity. If you feel discomfort, your brain wants escape. And that's perfectly normal. But wealth is strange, because wealth usually rewards the exact opposite behavior: the ability to delay gratification, the ability to tolerate uncertainty, the ability to endure temporary discomfort. Not forever, just longer than most people. Think about learning a skill. At first, there's no reward. Think about investing. At first, there's almost no visible progress. Think about building a business. For a long time, it can feel like effort without evidence. That's why wealth-building activities often feel irrational in the beginning. Your brain wants proof now, but wealth arrives later, much later. And that's where many people unknowingly lose, not because they lack discipline, because they are trapped in survival mode. When you're constantly focused on today's problems, tomorrow becomes invisible. The wealthy aren't necessarily better people. They simply become better at protecting future rewards from present emotions. That sounds small. It's not. Because over years, this single difference creates a gap that becomes enormous. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Two people can face the exact same circumstances and respond completely differently. And the reason reveals one of the biggest wealth-building advantages nobody talks about. Imagine two co-workers, same office, same salary, same opportunities, same economy. At first glance, their financial future should look similar, but it doesn't. A new opportunity appears. Maybe it's a project, a certification, a side business idea, a networking event, something with potential. but no guaranteed reward. The first person sees risk, extra effort, extra uncertainty, extra responsibility. And because the payoff isn't immediate, the opportunity feels expensive. So they pass. Completely understandable. Most people would. The second person sees the exact same opportunity, yet they interpret it differently. Not because they're smarter, because they ask a different question. Instead of asking, "What will I get from this?" they ask, "What could this turn into?" That single difference changes everything. Most people evaluate opportunities based on immediate outcomes. Future-focused people evaluate opportunities based on future leverage. And leverage is where wealth accelerates. The challenge is that leverage looks boring at first. Learning a new skill doesn't feel wealthy. Building relationships doesn't feel wealthy. Reading industry knowledge doesn't feel wealthy. Improving communication doesn't feel wealthy. Yet years later, these invisible investments often become the reason one person's income multiplies while another person's income stagnates. Here's the hidden psychological trap. People naturally underestimate delayed rewards. The brain discounts future benefits because they aren't visible yet. You can feel today's sacrifice. You cannot feel tomorrow's payoff. That's why people abandon valuable opportunities far too early. Not because the opportunity was bad, because the reward schedule was too slow. This creates a fascinating paradox. The actions that create the greatest long-term rewards often feel the least rewarding in the moment. And the actions that feel rewarding in the moment often create the weakest long-term results. Think about that, because once you see it, you start noticing it everywhere. The wealthy often aren't chasing rewards. They're building leverage. The struggling often aren't lazy. They're simply responding to immediate feedback. And that's a very human mistake. But beneath all of this sits an even deeper force. A force so powerful that it influences how you see opportunities, time, risk, and reward. Most people never recognize it, yet it quietly controls almost every financial decision they make. And once you understand it, everything we've discussed suddenly clicks into place. The force underneath wealth is not money, it's identity. And this is where things become uncomfortable, because identity operates quietly. You rarely notice it, yet it influences almost everything you do. Think about the phrase, "I'm just not good with money." At first it sounds harmless, a casual observation, something people say all the time, but your brain hears something different. It hears instructions. Every identity statement becomes a filter, a lens through which you interpret reality. If you believe you're bad with money, you'll unconsciously search for evidence that proves it. A mistake becomes proof. A setback becomes proof. A bad month becomes proof, and slowly, without realizing it, you begin acting in ways that protect the identity you've already accepted. This is why financial progress feels so difficult for many people. They're trying to change behavior while keeping the same identity. It's like trying to drive north while facing south. You can move, but everything feels harder than it should. Now compare that to someone who sees themselves differently. Not rich, not successful, not financially free, just capable of learning. That's the key. Because wealth builders rarely start with certainty. They start with ownership. Instead of saying, "I'm bad with money," they say, "I'm learning money." One identity closes the door, the other keeps it open. And this creates a chain reaction. A person who believes growth is possible reads one more book, learns one more skill, asks one more question, takes one more opportunity. The actions seem tiny, but identity compounds. Just like money. Here's a simple analogy. Imagine two gardeners. Both receive identical seeds. One believes nothing will grow. The other believes growth takes time. The first gardener stops watering after a few days because nothing is visible. The second gardener continues. Weeks later, one garden is empty. The other is alive. The seeds were never the difference. The belief behind the actions was. That's what happens financially. People think wealth builders have different opportunities. Sometimes they do. But more often, they have different identities. One person sees effort as proof something is wrong. The other sees effort as proof something is growing. That difference changes everything, because the moment you stop seeing wealth as an outcome and start seeing it as an identity, your entire relationship with money shifts. And that leads to the most important question of all. How do you actually change that identity? Not theoretically, not motivationally, practically. Because this is where most advice completely falls apart. Section 4. The one shift that accelerates wealth. People assume wealth builders think bigger. Often they simply think longer. That's the shift. Longer, not bigger, longer. The average person asks, "What will this do for me today?" The wealth builder asks, "What will this do for me 5 years from now?" Same decision, different timeline. And timelines change behavior. Imagine planting a tree. If your expectation is fruit tomorrow, you'll quit. If your expectation is fruit years from now, you'll stay consistent. The activity hasn't changed, only the timeline has. This is why one of the most powerful wealth habits is developing what could be called future vision, the ability to mentally connect today's actions with tomorrow's outcomes. Most people break that connection. They separate today from the future. So spending feels disconnected from wealth, learning feels disconnected from income, discipline feels disconnected from freedom, but they're all connected. The wealthy simply see the connection more clearly. That's why they can tolerate actions that feel unrewarding in the short term, because they are emotionally connected to future benefits. And here's the practical shift. Stop asking whether an action feels rewarding. Start asking whether it creates leverage. That question changes everything. A purchase may feel rewarding. Does it create leverage? A skill may feel difficult. Does it create leverage? A conversation may feel inconvenient. Does it create leverage? A habit may feel boring. Does it create leverage? Because leverage is what allows effort to multiply, and wealth is rarely created by effort alone. It's created when effort begins working harder than you do. The moment you start evaluating decisions through leverage instead of immediate emotion, your financial future begins to change, not overnight, but permanently. And that's far more powerful. Let's return to where we started. Two people, same income, same opportunities, completely different financial outcomes. At first, it looks unfair. It looks mysterious. It looks like luck. But now you can see what's happening beneath the surface. One person is constantly reacting. The other is consistently investing. One is focused on immediate rewards. The other is focused on future leverage. One sees effort without results. The other sees results being built before they're visible. And perhaps the biggest surprise is this. The people who build wealth faster aren't always making better financial decisions. They're making better psychological decisions. That's the hidden game. Because wealth is not just a money problem, it's a perception problem, a time problem, an identity problem. And once those pieces change, the financial pieces often begin changing too. Slowly at first, then all at once. The world loves dramatic success stories, but wealth usually grows quietly, in private, inside ordinary decisions that seem insignificant at the time. A question asked, a skill learned, a temptation resisted, a future chosen over comfort. Those moments don't look wealthy until one day they do. And maybe that's the real reason some people build wealth faster than others. They're not waiting for a better future. They're building it before anyone else can see it, including themselves.